Hello, so today's going to be something a little bit different than VODs and VOD reviews. I'm actually going to make a tier list of the units in the upcoming set, Inkborn Fables, which is set 11, releasing this Wednesday, so in 2 days from uploading this. As I go through the units, I will also show you some boards that illustrate how you can play those units and what comps they work with and stuff like that, to give you a little bit of a head start on how to play some of the units if you haven't already been trying it out in PvE. I would like to give credit where credit's due. So Dicek on Twitter made this set 11 comp list, as well as this Reddit post by Mercurial. Sorry, EU West. I don't watch EU, but this was very helpful. I took the pictures from these two sites, so you'll see when you see a Reddit or a Twitter picture, then you'll know that I took the images from these top level players, just to help illustrate the boards, and I will link them both in the comments so that you can check them out and make your own judgments and look at some of the other comps that might be excluded. Alright, so the way we're going to go through this tier list, just to explain it really briefly. So I'm basically going to rank it in 5 different tiers. I'm going to go per the unit cost. So we're going to rank them separately by 1 cost, 2 cost, 3 cost, 4 cost, 5 cost. I think it's just a little bit easier because it's hard to like gauge the strength of a 1 cost versus a 5 cost, stuff like that. The red tier basically saying can reroll or on final board basically means, is this unit rerollable, that you can basically go for a 3-star version of this unit and win the game, or will you see it on like the final board, right? So is it like a strong enough unit that's like, yes, I need this on my final board because of the synergies it gives or the relative strength of it. And then working down the tier is just like, is it strong versatile, is it all right, is it super situational, or is it just bad that you just don't want to play it? All right, so now we're going to start with the 1 costs. So Ari is like a faded caster. I would say she's somewhere between strong, versatile, and alright. I think I would put it something like this, and at the same time what we're talking about, we'll put Yone. So these are 2 faded units. Faded is like really strong, but I feel like all the units are super contested. There is a reroll because Yasuo in this set is a frontline magic tank, so you can actually like go for Ari, Yasuo reroll and 3-star both of these units. The problem is I feel like you just lose so much tempo because like a lot of the units to actually make this board viable are more expensive, and then if you spend time rerolling, unless you natural them and then you're just playing them like kind of like a 3-star on like another board, it makes sense. But I think Ari is pretty strong in terms of just like maybe I just put them both in alright. We'll see how it goes, because there's a lot of other units I think are a little bit stronger than these 2. But I think if you 3-star both of them, it might be something like that. But I think in general, they're kind of alright. Kog'Maw's in this. I think Kog'Maw's in the reroll tier, right? So there is actually a Kog'Maw reroll board, which I'll show now. Kog'Maw fits in a lot of boards. He's basically Sniper, Invoker, and Mythic. So he's a 3 trait, and all 3 traits are really good. You can actually reroll Kog'Maw Cho'Gath. I've seen people also 3-star the Caitlyn and the Malphite in this comp. But Kog'Maw just does so much damage. He's one of those units that's almost like guaranteed that you'll kill a unit if you play him. So even if you're not rerolling him, you're usually playing him early game for tempo, or you keep him in because like Mythic Invoker works really well with Lilia, as well as other Invoker boards, and he's just like good throughout like the whole game. Like a lot of stage 2 and 3 you can kind of play Kog'Maw on. Caitlyn's like Kog'Maw, that she kills units, but she's like a little bit worse because I feel like you're never really building around Caitlyn, but sometimes you can build around Kog'Maw. So I'd put her in like the strong versatile. I think all 1 costs are really situational, so don't think that like you see a Kog'Maw and you're just gonna force Kog'Maw reroll and it's gonna win you the game. It's more so like Kog'Maw is like you never really want to skip it because like you could get so much tempo with like a Kog'Maw too. This guy, I think he's either here or here. This is Kabuko. He's like the new unit that they made. He's Fortune Bruiser. Bruiser is good if you need him for like Bruiser, so sometimes you want to hold on to him as well as with Fortune. But I feel like in terms of like a frontline unit, he's always like one of the first to cut. So I feel like it's very situational, like unless you're like playing towards Bruisers or you need a Bruiser in just to tech it in, or you're playing towards Fortune. So that's why I'll put it situational. Kha'Zix is either here or here. I don't know because I never played Kha'Zix reroll in the PvE, but you can actually reroll Kha'Zix as well, right? The Kha'Zix reroll is kind of like basically this trait called Heavenly, if you haven't seen it already, and basically gives like more traits, and you're kind of incentivized to reroll all the heavenly units. And you kind of have to make the decision, am I going to reroll for like the higher cost ones or like the 1-star ones, because there's 2 1-stars, which Malphite and Kha'Zix. I've seen this Kha'Zix go nuts, and he fits on a lot of the really strong boards like the Reapers and the other things. Like he has decent synergies and he gives crit chance. So I feel like he's one of those units that you do want to like, that you see a lot on a final board, even if you don't reroll it. So I'll put him in the Kog'Maw tier. Garen's here. So Warden is really strong, and there's also the hero augment that you can reroll Garen. So he's just kind of fits in that final board tier. Malphite I think is in the same spot as alright. Like you're not upset, you're not sad. And same with Darius, he's kind of alright. I think Rek'Sai is strong. Rek'Sai is Dryad and Bruiser, so you fit him in really nicely if you're playing towards Bruiser, and there's a lot of reroll comps that use him really well. He also has stun and gives himself armor, so it's just like he has a lot of utility that's really good. Sivir, I think Sivir is in like, I guess she's also an alright tier. And then Cho'Gath, Sivir is basically Trick Shot, so if you're playing towards Trick Shot, she's really good, and she's also Story Weaver, so you usually want to like keep her in. Jax is Warden. It might be something like this, actually. Yeah. And then I'll put Cho'Gath. I want to rearrange these because I think I can spread this out a little bit. I think, I think I'm happier with the tier breakdown like this. Also, note this is like relative to each other, right? So like, I'm not saying this is S tier relative to like an S tier 5 cost, obviously, but I think it's more like this, because Darius is a duelist, and you kind of want to play it situationally, because you're never really like carrying Darius, or like only in certain situations you carry it. I guess I would also put like, I think faded units are just really strong this patch, and I think Cho'Gath being mythic also works really well. You see him a lot of times like on a final board, but you don't want to. And then Kabuko is probably just in the bad tier if I have to single it out, just to spread it out a little bit. But I think like these two are like just in their own tier a little bit above these ones. If you have the Garen augment, then he's like Giga S, but I think it's more like that. The main reason for Jax and Garen here, by the way, is just because they're Wardens. Warden is probably the strongest frontline trait, so a lot of times you're basically playing these Wardens the whole game, and they're very, very strong. So if you had a Jax early or a Garen early, you probably want to hold on to it just because you can play like 4 Warden in the mid game and save a lot of HP like that. And you save a lot of HP just playing Caitlyn's and these. Like, these are all units that you save a lot of HP on, so I think it's just really good. Alright, 2 costs. Shen. So I think like Shen is like, it's probably Shen is alright. Aatrox is strong. So Shen basically like he helps. There's a hero augment for Shen. If you get the hero augment, then he's probably like here. I don't think it's like the most broken hero augment, but I think he's like in an alright tier, and he's ghostly. So like if it's incentivized that he like that you kind of level him up a lot, and then he like helps spread the damage. Aatrox is really strong because Aatrox is ghostly bruiser, which fits well with a lot of boards. A lot of reroll boards that use Aatrox because of that. And then he's also Ink Shadow, and Ink Shadow basically gives you a free item, and Ink Shadow units early are so broken. Like if you have 3 Ink Shadow early, you basically get so much tempo because all the Ink Shadow items are really strong, I find. And in general, you're basically just up an item and you can put it on any unit, right? A lot of the times like these item augment traits would usually make an item that's only on one specific unit. With Ink Shadow, you get an item and you can put it on any unit on your board. So even if you're not like playing like an Ink Shadow carry, teching an Ink Shadow and just getting a +1 item on your strongest unit is just really good for tempo. So it's like very strong early. It falls off a bit late, but by the time it's late, you have enough time to like fix your board, right? And Aatrox also does MR Shred. So if you have him in, you can kind of like delay making an MR Shred item, which helps you focus on like item economy and making like the items that you might need for like your carries or your frontline units until you have like a chance to make that MR Shred, which is really strong. Kindred's in a reroll tier. So Kindred reroll is really strong. This is like one rendition of it. A lot of times you're basically just trying to play Kindred with 4 Dryad. I feel like the best way to reroll Kindred is if you have a Dryad +1, but you don't necessarily need to reroll like usually you do Kindred, Gnar, 4 Dryad early and you gain a bunch of Dryad stacks. And it's something like this with something that kind of looks like that. The problem with Kindred is like even if you don't reroll it, I've been playing like 2-star Kindred. Like a lot of times I itemize my 2-star Kindred to hold for like Arcanists or like faded units because he's faded. Like I play around that style of board where he's like a really good item holder for AP items, and it's insane. Like I had 2-star Kindred up until like stage 5 and I was still like win streaking in some games, right? Obviously the rest of my board was fairly upgraded, but it was crazy. Like I think even like a 2-star Kindred is just absolutely broken. This guy, I think he's in the same Shen tier. Yorick, he's like good, but he's not like broken. Senna is definitely broken. If I had to put it above, it's definitely above. The Senna board, oops, I didn't X this one. The Senna board basically looks like this, and you basically reroll on 6. You're trying to cap out around 4 Warden and Dryad and Ghostly. But basically what you do is you play Senna with Ink Shadow, with Aatrox, with Gnar, and you basically just 3-star everything. I've seen people 3-star like literally all the units on this board except maybe a Mumu and a Laui because they're super contested. And you're basically Senna, Gnar, reroll. This is like one of the most broken comps. I think it's like, you know, if I was making a top 5, this is 100% in the top 5. It's just like whether or not I'm going to say it's the top 1, right? So it's really important to know that. Expect it to be contested. Another broken comp is also the Teemo reroll. So Teemo reroll works in 2 ways, like this one as well as the Teemo reroll. This is a rendition of it that's using like Bard and Tom Kench, and you're probably rolling on 7. There's a rendition of this that didn't find a picture of on either of the 2 sites because I think it's like very NA. That it was like played a lot in the tournament. That's really broken. Is like a 2-cost heavy version of Teemo carry. Teemo carry is really strong. He's also Fortune. You can play 2-star Teemo to carry you like well into late game. Like you can even like tempo it to try and like fast 9 if you have like a lot of HP and you're just like, and everybody's playing really greedy. It's just really strong. Kiana I think is situational. You can reroll Kiana, but it's not like busted, right? And I think like Heavenly is situational, Duelist is situational, right? Duelist used to be really broken and then they nerfed it. I don't know how it is now because nobody plays it anymore and it feels kind of weak when I tried it out. But like there used to be like a Duelist reroll comp, but you're never really building towards Kiana because you'd rather play on 7 odds and build towards Tristana at that point. So I think she's kind of like situational in how you're going to play around her, and if you're going to have her on your board. Zyra's like alright. She has good traits and I think it works out really well, but she's not like broken or anything. But a lot of times you just want to play her for Story Weaver. Nico, I think Nico is in like the strong tier. Nico does like a lot of damage and a lot of spread, and there's also the hero augment for Nico that makes her like kind of good, but you know, I think the hero augment's a little bit bait. The main thing with Nico is that she fits in on a lot of boards as Arcanist and Mythic, right? A lot of things in this set, I feel like the units are very simple in terms of what they do, and the traits are simple in terms of what they do. There's not like wildly like crazy things. Even like Fortune, which is like the econ trait this set, is very like mild, right? It's just like, you know, lose streak, gain reward. Don't lose streak, don't gain reward, right? So in a set like this, I feel like a lot of the units that have 3 traits are just way more beneficial because it's really easy to fit them in on boards. And especially if you're playing something like towards Exalted, which is probably the craziest mechanic of the set, where like random units will give your whole team bonus damage. It kind of feels like, okay, I guess I'll just play towards like, you know, generic board, for example, with a lot of traits in that just buffs the whole team. And her being like Mythic, Heavenly, and Arcanist, it's like usually like they're all good traits to have. Arcanist gives like AP to the whole board. Mythic, she can just get really, really tanky and big. And then Heavenly also gives buffs to the whole board if you just want to tech in like 2 Heavenly and just pick the traits that best fit your team, right? So that's why she's kind of in A tier. Gnar is like, I don't think he's S tier, because Gnar, I feel like you always need to like dual carry, and he's not like the greatest of item holder. I guess Gnar's Warden, right? Yeah, I guess I'll put him at S tier, but just know that he's like in between the two of these, right? You know, it's not like that great. Also, I think I'm not putting it enough in bad tier. It might be like that if I'm spreading out based on the tiers. Yeah, I'll probably do like this, right? Like it's hard to like describe it. I think I like this better though. I think there's no 2 cost that's like really bad, which makes sense. Gnar, you reroll him the same way like I showed with the Kindred board as well as the Senna board. So he's like really contested and really strong. And Dryad scales HP into late game. So if you get Dryad in early, he'll also be able to be played in a final board situation, which is also really good. Lux is like here as well. She's like in the same spot as Gnar. Lux reroll is pretty strong. Basically, you can play the 6 Arcanist board, which I'll show again later probably. You can basically play around Lux or Syndra, so you can reroll Lux or you can go for Syndra. But it kind of makes it weird because rolling on 7 kind of feels bad for Lux, but you don't want to roll on 6 to 0. You kind of want to, you can only really play this if you natural a bunch of Luxes. I'll tell you now, Lux can miss. So Lux is just really strong because she's also Porcelain. So Porcelain fits well with Faded. Arcanist gives a bunch of AP. Porcelain gives you attack speed, so she's just a monster if you 3-star her. And Porcelain also gives like damage reduction, so like if you have the Amumu on your board in the front line, it also helps your board out. So this board's just really strong. The problem is all of these units are super contested, right? If you look at them, it's like Nico, Alawi, those are going to be hard to find. Amumu, that's going to be hard to find because even the snipers, like 80 units, are going to want to tech him in. And he's Warden, and everybody wants to play Warden because everybody's been talking about how broken it is. And then Lux herself, it's like if you're rolling for Lux, you might not be able to hit Syndra or Zoe, and then you have to hold on to R. It's just a really awkward board to hit unless you like high roll into it, I find. And Lux also can like whiff. Like Lux's projectile takes time after she aims, so like units like Kindred that can sidestep or jump around, she can just miss. So like know that Lux, I'm putting her in the reroll tier because the reroll is broken. Like if you get a Lux 3, you might just win out for free, right? Because you even have high roll potential for late game because like that board that I just showed you, you can play a set, you can play a, oh that's not, I already deleted the board. You can play like set, you can play 5 cost really easily into it as well, is what I mean to say. Right, like almost every 5 cost when you level up can fit on that board and do a lot of work. So Janna's also in the reroll tier. I haven't tried it out, so I don't know how good it is, but basically this is like a Dragon Lord Invoker setup. But I feel like you need a lot of, like if you look at this board, you need to like tempo it really crazily. So you need to natural the, again, a lot of times with the 2 cost, unless you're playing like the Senna reroll or Gnar reroll or Kindred reroll, where most of your units are low level on your board, you need to like tempo these boards, right? If you're playing this Dragon Lord board, this is broken. It's like a top 1 board. But if you look at it, to fit in Invoker as well as 4 Dragon Lord, you need a lot of leveling money as well, right? So it's a little bit difficult to like build towards Janna, but she has to be in the S tier because she's broken. And then Riven, I think Riven's somewhere between here and here. I think Riven's in the alright tier. I think Riven used to be broken and they nerfed it a little bit, if I'm not mistaken. So Riven has Altruist, which is like really strong. Like if you have like 3 Altruist or 4 Altruist, like an Altruist emblem, it's like basically a win out trait. It's like super duper strong. It basically gives like a bunch of MR and armor to your whole team, and then also makes it so that the Riven heals your whole team, right? It's like every Altruist unit has a free gunblade built in. So it's very, very strong. But it's also kind of hard to fit in sometimes. I think, you know, if Bruisers were a little bit stronger than Warden right now is the go-to front line, which is why like a lot of the Bruisers and the Behemoths are kind of falling a little bit down on the list. But I think that like she's not as versatile as like a Nico or an Aatrox, so I definitely think there's a distinction. But she's probably like towards the top of this, right? I think Shen's also really good. Riven and Shen maybe are in their own tier. It might be something like this, right? Maybe this is something I'm a little bit happier with, because I think Yorick is really awkward. Actually Zyra's up here. Yeah, it's something like this. I think it's something like this is the board, right? Yeah, I think something. Yorick's Umbral too. You know what? We're gonna go back to this. The Umbral trait is really busted because Yorick fits in on a lot of boards that need Umbral, so it's probably something like this in terms of the way these boards work. Alright, so now let's go to 3 costs. So 3 costs. Alun. Alun used to be like the most broken unit in the game, and then they nerfed her so dramatically. But I think all the nerfs, she's just not like a carry unit anymore, right? You're not rerolling her to like star up your whole board, but you do tech her in a lot. She's Umbral and Invoker, and both Umbral and Invoker you can activate as a 2 trait, which means you only need 2 units to activate the trait for your whole board. Umbral basically is like KDA hexes, and it gives you like shield as well as an execute. So it's good to just tech in sometimes if you get it for free. Like, it's not something you're going to be like, oh, I need to play Umbral, because it's like a very minor buff. But if it's like, oh, I get this for free, that's really good. And being Invoker is the same way. It's like, oh, I get Invoker for free, my whole board gets a little bit of mana. That's really good. That can like sway a fight, right? Especially like late game, just having like, you know, one of your carries cast a little bit faster or have enough time to cast twice might win you the game. So she's just really strong, and then she also gives attack speed to the entire back row. Isn't that crazy? And guess what? You want to know something else that she does? She also does MR shred. So let me just say that again, right? Like, before she was actually like a carry unit, which was insane as well. Thank God they nerfed this unit, because she's still broken. She's Invoker, Umbral, so you can tech in. They're both 2 traits, right? It's like, so long as your board can fit the Alun, she's not bad to play in my opinion. Because then she also gives attack speed and MR shred. It's like she has so much utility. Like, she has so much purpose on board. And she's part of the reason why Umbral is also really broken, which we'll get to in a little bit. Alawi's the same way, but Alawi I think is a little bit better than Alun, if we're like thinking about it. Alawi, basically she's like a warden, and she's like one of the go-to frontline units. She's also ghostly, which basically buffs your whole team. If you have 2 ghostly in it, basically does extra damage based on the little spectrals. So I scrolled a little bit, sorry. And she's also Arcanist, which also buffs your whole board with giving you some AP. So she's just strong as shit. She's one of the best carries. Bard is in that reroll tier. Bard is so strong. You can just carry and win. You can get first place with Bard. So Bard reroll is very strong. Oops, I have like a thing here. So Bard reroll, usually just you have to prioritize making a Gwynsu. Some people make double Gwynsu, some people make Giant Slayer, but basically just tech in Story Weaver. You get the Kale in by having 3 Story Weaver. You play Bard, and you roll towards Bard and Tom Kench, and it's very strong. The Bard basically has Trick Shot. He basically shoots and hits a bunch of units, and he scales with attack speed really well, which is why you need the Gwynsu. And a lot of times if you can hit Bard 3, like Bard 2 a lot of times is stable. That's the problem with a lot of the rerolls. Rerolls is really strong in this patch, and you'll keep hearing me like, you know, I'm going over these low cost units, and I'm just like fucking rambling and talking about all these like reroll comms. It's because like they're literally, most of these reroll comms are super stable on a 2-star. Right? Like, they are stronger than most 4-cost 1-stars, and some of them are stronger than 4-cost 2-stars, which is just feels so unbalanced, but it's just so viable. So Bard is just broken. Soraka, I think Soraka is here, but that's my hot take. I think Soraka is fucking busted. She does so much damage if you play her right, but I think relative to everybody else, she's here. I don't think people really play Soraka reroll, and I'm worried that if I do this, people will roast me for being wrong. Even though I think, like, give it a few weeks, she'll be up here. Or give it like a week. Like, make the patch go live, and when everybody's rerolling, you'll see that this shit is broken. But like, I think relative to everybody else, nobody really talks about it as much. Or from what I've seen, nobody's like, even in tournament, nobody was playing it on the weekend. Or I think 1 person or 2 people played it, but it's not like that big. So we'll put her down just to satisfy the people of the world, so I don't get like flamed. I think Tom Kench is also up here. Tom Kench is you reroll with the Bard. He's also mythic with the Bard. Diana, she used to be broken. Maybe she's up here. Amumu is here for sure. Amumu you don't even reroll. It's just because Amumu is just fucking busted. Like, he's Warden, and he's probably the best frontline. I think Amumu, like, depending on what you think about the boards, I think Amumu is the most contested unit in the whole game right now. Like, this style of patch. Obviously, everything can change. This is based on PBE. I should have said that at the beginning of the fucking video. But this is based on PBE, so like when the patch goes live, like a lot of these things might change if they don't fix certain things. But yeah, Amumu is Warden, Porcelain. They're both giga strong frontline traits, as well as Porcelain's really good just to have for either if you're playing Lux or Ashe or Lissandra, right? And then he's also well, no, actually it's just Warden, Porcelain. But the thing is that Warden and Porcelain both fit with AD boards if you're playing towards snipers because of the Ashe and the Aphelios, or it's really good for AP if you're playing the Arcanist version, which includes a Lux and a Lissandra almost always. So no matter which way you're playing, AP or AD, even if it's like not your main carry, it's a secondary carry, the Amumu is just really strong. Aphelios is here. Aphelios would be here, but I think it's just too contested. But you can reroll Aphelios, right? Like Aphelios reroll kind of looks like this. There's different versions of it. Like sometimes you just make like all damage like this, like i.e. I've seen people do like Gwinsu Runan's DB, right? You basically just want him to like cast a bunch and attack a bunch, and it's like however you get to that attack speed is how you get it. But as you can see here, you're 3-starring Amumu and Aphelios, right? Sometimes you go for Thresh, but it's like this line is just so contested because like you basically need to play like a bunch of extra AP units like Alawi and Syndra and the Faded board. So I feel like you won't be able to wrong tab. I feel like you won't be able to play towards the Aphelios really well, but there is like this nice little option select of like, okay, I'm building towards like Sniper, for example. Do I want to carry 3-star Aphelios or do I want to carry Ashe? And then when you roll down, if you hit 1 or 2 Ashes and not a lot of Aphelioses, you can say, okay, I'll prioritize Ashe because they use similar items. And if you don't hit those units and you hit a bunch of Aphelioses, then it's like, okay, I'll just play Aphelios, right? So there's this nice option select if it's open, right? Like if it's open, or even if you're getting contested, right? If someone's contesting you Ashe and they're leveling to 8, you can look at their board and you can say, okay, well, fuck it, I'm gonna stay 7, I'll roll for Aphelios, right? I feel like that option select is really strong. Like, and there's a couple comps like that. The same with like Lux Syndra, except the separation between Lux and Syndra, you have to make the decision a lot earlier, so it's a little bit more difficult. Right here it's like a 3 cost versus a 4 cost, and there it's like a 2 cost versus a 4 cost. So how much you invest in leveling kind of matters. Zoe is rerollable. I think I'm gonna have to separate the tiers because this is reroll. Like the Zoe board is fucking busted as well, right? You could play this instead of Lux and it kind of fits the same thing. You're basically just play like a bunch of traits and 3 Story Weaver. And you can also 3-star Zoe if you're playing like the Arcanist board that I showed before with the 6 Arcanists for the Lux reroll. So there's like a lot of shit you can hit. But as you can see, a lot of time the front line is always Alawi Amumu, because this is like the standard like Warden front line, and they're just broken. They're just so fucking strong. So those two are just gonna exist up there. Alawi might be like, I think Alawi might be in the same tier as these guys. I might have to switch up the tiers a little bit. Yone is the most broken out of all the units, I think. Hopefully I have a Yone board. Yone, I've seen Yone 2 to fast 9. I see people not even reroll Yone to get 3-star Yone. Like, they better nerf this shit before the patch goes live, or I swear to God, there's gonna be like 3 Yone players in every lobby. Like, mark my words. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's like Yone 2 with like an Umbral board. This guy's so fucking broken. So you don't play 4 Reaper. I used to say that you play 4 Reaper. You play 4 Reaper if you have a spat, and then your board is like you just stack some traits and you just stabilize, and then you stabilize until you can hit like items on like some of your frontline units and just like go for it. This is one where it's like it's also giving you like Invoker and Ghostly, but you can also play like 6 Umbral at the same level instead, which you just lose a bunch of utility traits, which is why it's like sometimes a little bit weaker. But if you're trying to tempo your board, it's like whatever you hit, you can build your board around the Silas as well, like Yone Silas duel, or you can build around the Alun if you're trying to like send it on level 7 and try and hit both of them, or you can just fucking tempo the board because the Yone is broken. Like, I hope before PBE ends they at least nerf the Yone out of everybody. Tristana is rerollable with Volibear, and Thresh is somewhere here maybe. I think it's alright. So Tristana Volibear is like the duelist comp. Usually you need a duelist +1 to play it, so it's a little bit weaker than the other ones. But you can still fit this in because basically instead of the Diana, instead of playing the Diana now or one of these units, like instead of playing like you want to hit the Diana, but it's probably like Ornn that you lose. Like instead of playing the Ornn here, you just switch it out for Darius, and then you have the 6 duelists. But it's just kind of awkward because your Diana, you really want to hold like a duelist emblem if you get it. So this is like very forcible if you have a duelist crest. But basically like Tristana just jumps in and kills everything, and you build her towards like one shot ADing. And then Volibear is like a giga tank. So usually the main 2 that you're trying to level, or main 2 that you're trying to pair up, is Tristana and this. So this looks really scuffed now because like everybody's like in broken tier. So this is what the patch kind of looks like. This is what scares me because like everything is reroll, right? Like I showed you like the other tiers, like 2 cost and 1 cost. Like there's not many 1 cost rerolls. There's a lot of 2 cost rerolls and a lot of 3 cost rerolls. So I feel like the whole lobby is just gonna be rerolling, and it's gonna be so fucking degenerate. So I don't know what's gonna happen this patch, and I'm kind of scared, and I might not like the game, and I'll probably be like whining and bitching about it. But just be prepared that like almost everything you can reroll and it's viable, and it's just a matter of like understanding like what other people need on their board so that you don't contest, because playing contested is awful. And the problem with rerolls as well is that you kind of have to high roll into a lot of natural copies, because now there's no chosen mechanics, so you can't just like roll and get like 3 free copies. So in order to tempo the board well, you have to kind of play around the people that miss as well, and you have to try and not be one that misses. So like if you like, I had a game where I was Lux, right? I leveled to 7, I had Lux 2, and I rolled like 50 gold on level 7. I found 1 Lux, right? I know you're supposed to roll on 6, but I was rolling on 7 because I needed a Moo-Moos and Alawis that I didn't have. But it's just like sometimes it's just awful and you just hit nothing and it's really low roll, and then you just go 8th. So you have to be able to like flex between the rerolls, as well as understand like, okay, even though everybody in the lobby is reroll, even though like I'm reroll, I need to like see how I can get to a different board that is still stable enough to top 4, because like, you know, there's gonna be people that miss on the roll downs, and I just need to capitalize on that by having a strong board, right? So that being said, I'm gonna switch up the tiers a little bit just to show you like what I mean. So like something like let's see, something like this. Like these are probably like your most broken ones. Nah, it's probably like Zoe actually. I think like Bard and this one are the most broken. And then these are units that you always want to play. So maybe it's like something like this, I would say, is a little bit like these rerolls. This reroll is a little bit situational. This reroll is really hard to hit because like all the faded units, the Arcanist, like it's hard to build the board around this sniper dude. But he's also really broken, and Zoe's also really broken, but it's like Zoe and this guy are really contested because these 2 are really contested because they're like broken frontline units. So yeah, and then these guys are just like the kingpins of this tier. But basically if you go back to who can be rerolled, it's like all of this. Anyways, forecasts. Time for forecasts. Annie is Invoker. She's like a really good frontline unit. I feel like she fits in really nicely. She's either alright or strong. I'll put her in strong tier. Lee Sin, I think he used to be like broken, but I think he's a little bit worse now. I think he fits in really nicely, but I honestly feel like Lee Sin's a little bit worse than Annie, because I feel like Annie's synergies of just maybe they're both like here. Also, I'm not gonna put reroll. I'll just put like broken for this, because we're not really talking about rerolling 4 costs. But basically like that's the wrong one. Syndra is broken. So Syndra you play with the Arcanist board. So this is what I was saying before. If you don't go for Lux reroll or Zoe reroll in this version of the comp, you can go for Syndra just as a normal carry, like a 4 cost. She does so much damage. She used to be absolute trash, and it used to be unclickable, and now she's just like one of the best clickable units in the game. And the same with Kayn. Kayn is so versatile because Kayn you could just play on like almost any board. right? So like Kane, you could just play like this is a very flex board where I'm just shoving in a bunch of stuff. You can play him with Reapers, and you can go for 4 Reaper. You can play him with a Ghostly setup, which is kind of like what this is with Morgana. You can set him up. You can just like, if you hit a Kane 2, he just does so much fucking damage, and he has 2 traits like Reaper and Ghostly, that you can usually just fit him in, that you have like a Ghostly front line, or you have a Reaper somewhere, and he just does so much damage. I've been bitching about it in some of my videos because I don't know if they fixed it yet or if they will fix it before live, but he just wipes the whole fucking board, right? And then they nerfed Yone, and then they buffed Yone, and now Yone wipes the whole board too. So it's like, what the fuck is this, right? So that's why these two I think are in their special tier, and I think Lilia's also there. The Lilia Invoker boards are like fucking crazy. Oh, this is another Kane setup. This is like Kane with Ashe, which we'll talk about in a second. But Lilia, you can basically play with like vertical mythic, and you can play with like 5 mythic or 7 mythic. But a lot of times you just want to get it for Invoker, and she synergizes well with Kog'Maw from before. So a lot of times you can temple your Kog'Maw into a Lilia setup, and then play with like 1 or 2 extra Invokers, and you'll just be giga strong. I think this Lilia unit is maybe like even more broken than like the Ashe Kane setup, or even more broken than just like Kane Umbral setup or Kane whatever setup. Ornn I think is really strong. He also gives an item. I think Galio's also over there. Nautilus I think is in this all right tier. Nautilus is a Warden, but I feel like his casts don't do that much. I think Galio's probably here. I think Ornn is separate just because of the Dryad scaling, and he also gives an item to one of your dudes. I think Ornn is just super strong. The only problem is that he's Behemoth. So maybe it's something like this. Like Nautilus just gets up here because he's Warden. So, and Warden's like the strong go-to frontline trait, unless they nerf it before the patch goes live. Kai'Sa is in like situational or bad, and same with Morgana. But I think Morgana gets a buff to all right. So Kai'Sa is the Ink Shadow. She's kind of hard to itemize towards, and you don't want to play vertical Ink Shadow. It's like really good for tempo, but it falls off really hard in the middle game. So a lot of times you're just playing Kai'Sa like trying to find it, like Kai'Sa like this, where she's like a dual carry with like Ashe or something, but you're more prioritizing the Ashe, which we'll talk about in a second. The thing is, if you look at all of these boards that I've been showing, even some of the lower level boards, if you were paying attention, Morgana's on a lot of them because she's just a really good like Morello spread holder, and she's also Ghostly and Arcanist. Or sorry, she's Ghostly and Sage is really broken. It just gives like AP to your whole back line and Omnivamp to your whole front line. So she's just like really good to tech in. So that like she would be in this situational or bad, but she's kind of like here. I think it might be something like this, honestly. Like Kai'Sa might be like a whole tier below, and then Ashe is like in this strong tier. I think Ashe is a little bit harder to play around than these three, in my opinion, in terms of how broken she is, but she's like very close. Like you can do this and she'll be in the same tier. Ashe is just like, she's just really contested because she's Porcelain Sniper, so a lot of people just hold on to Ashes to play 4 Porcelain, right? Because if you're playing like, even if you're playing like the Syndra board, right? I don't know if I closed it, so I don't have it right now, but basically like Amumu, Lysandra and Lux fit in really well together. I don't have Lysandra here because she's a 5 cost, but if you high roll into a Lysandra, then you're 3 Porcelain, and 4 Porcelain is really strong. So a lot of times people are just playing Ashes just for the synergies, but other than that, she's like a really good like Gwynsu sniper build, and I guess I'll just put her in broken tier because she is really strong. Actually, it's probably something like this, I would say. I think I'm happier like that. And then this guy isn't strong. Silas is just so fucking strong. He just kills everything. You're almost never sad to like play a Silas 2 out of nowhere. I think this is better in Silas to like frontline. Yeah, I think I'm happier like this with the tier list. It just feels weird because these like this situational tier, like comparatively, like none of these units, I want you to know that situational, this is relative to these ones, right? And bad, right? Like this Kai'Sa is better than a lot of the 2 costs, and these ones are better tanks than most of the 2 cost and 3 costs, right? I want you guys to know that. It's just like relative to these tanks and these 4 cost carries, it's like, you know, that's it. Like, that's what I mean. This is relative to 4 costs, if that makes sense. All right, we made it. Last one in the video. 5 costs. So 3 of the 5 costs come to mind that are just like insanely broken. Wei, Lissandra, Set. So why are they broken? Wei is mythic, and he does this thing where he duplicates a unit on your bench. So if you hit him early, you can just win out because you basically just hit everything that you need to hit by just playing him on your board, right? If you're able to play away, he also does like a shit ton of damage, and he does like AoE, so it like spreads to everybody. It's so fucking crazy. Like, if you see somebody with like a Wei or a Wei 2, it's like they're almost always like 1 or 2, because even if you have like, if you hit a Wei early, you can just like duplicate your 5 cost and just have a 2-star 5 cost, or you can duplicate your 4 cost and guarantee that by the end of the stage you're gonna have your 2 cost 4 cost, which saves you so much gold that you don't have to roll. He's just so good. Like it would be better if he was nerfed. I hope before live happens he's nerfed so that he doesn't do as much damage, because he also does a shit ton of damage, right? You shouldn't have a unit that's so strong that does AoE damage to like the whole board, but also duplicate a unit on your bench. It's like, it doesn't make sense to me, right? Lissandra is similar, but she's like a little bit worse. She's not as good as Hui though, but she's really broken because she gives you items. So if you hit her early, you almost always want to play a Lissandra, because she basically like takes a unit, puts in a teapot, so now it's just out of the fight. So you can just like take their frontline tank and just remove it from the fight by putting in a fucking teapot. So now it's no longer doing anything in the fight, which is already a broken ability, right? Because it's just like a giga stun, right? But then on top of that, if she kills the unit, she also gives you items, so she can farm items. So she's really strong early, like especially if they have like 1 cost units on their board, you can position the Lissandra to try and kill those 1 cost units and then just farm components early. So she's broken. And then Set, I think Set's in this broken tier because he scales AD. So if you hit him early, and he's also Warden, which is like, you know, most boards are going to play Warden, and you can always like get rid of one of your 1 cost Wardens for a Set, because a lot of times you will be trying to play 4 Warden and you'll just have like 1 cost or 2 costs on there. So yeah, this guy's also fucking broken. Anyways, he's there in that tier. Xayah, I think is it's something like this. I'm just gonna put them down and then I'll talk about it because I want to see it. I think it's like this. So Xayah got buffed. I'm not sure how good she is. She could be here. Let's just put her here so that people are like happy. So Xayah and Rakan, these are like, if you put them in the front line, it's Rakan. If you put it in the back line, it's Xayah. And it becomes either Trick Shot or Altruist. So Altruist is just a really strong trait. This Rakan unit is very strong. If you get him upgraded, you can put items on him. And he's just a good frontline unit, and frontline units are just strong. So having a good frontline tank is really strong, and the same with Udyr. Udyr is just a really strong frontline unit, but both of these guys aren't in the broken tier because I feel like they need items to kind of make them shine. Rakan a little bit less, but yeah. Azir, maybe Azir is an alright. I think Azir is separate from these 5. So we're gonna move it down to like Wukong level. Azir is really nice to tech in because he's Dryad Invoker, and it works really well with some of the reroll boards, but like his relative utility value for reroll boards I don't think should matter as much in this tier list because he's a 5 cost. It's not like you can play around it. And the same with like Wukong, which is Sage Heavenly, so he's like pretty good to tech in, but it's like if you don't have a board for like, if you don't have a board that fits Azir or Wukong, as well as Irelia sometimes is a little bit hard to fit. She does give Shred, so she's kind of like a utility bot. So she's like somewhere here or here. But I think she would be like the top of all right or in strong. She's like somewhere like this, if that makes sense. Because she also has Shred, or Sundering naturally, which helps your board a lot. And then Xayah, I think, is really situational. You usually always want to play Rakan, and you're only playing Xayah if you're playing towards like trick shots, or if you really need backline damage because your front line is so fucking broken. But like at that point, you're probably not even picking up the Xayah. All right. So also, I just wanted to say like Wukong and Rakan and Dragon Lord is like, this is like a really good fast 9 board if you're playing towards it, where you're just trying to play like vertical Dragon Lords with like the Azir, the Wukong, and the Rakan. There's also another fast 9 board where you play It's a lot harder to hit where you play a Mumu, you play Lissandra, a Mumu set as like a trio, because Lissandra's Porcelain, Porcelain Arcanist, set is Warden, and then you put in a Mumu for Porcelain Warden, and it kind of ties these two together, and then you just play like one extra Arcanist, and you build your board around that. Alright, so let's, I'm just going to close some tabs here so I don't get confused. So let's go through the tier list. This is my 1 cost tier list that I kind of described, and I kind of showed you some of the boards. This is my 2 cost tier list. This is my 3 cost tier list. The 3 cost is kind of fucked. I should separate a little bit, but the thing is, all of these units are like, I feel like these two are maybe, I think it's something like this maybe. I think that makes me a little bit happier, a little bit more balanced, because Tristana Volibear is really situational, I find. Like, unless you have the Duelist +1, it feels kind of really awkward, but I think it's still strong relative to the others. It might be something like this. Yeah, it might be something like this, just to fix it up. The 4 costs, and then the 5 costs. Alright, it was a long video. I've been talking for like almost an hour now, so hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully this gave you some insight on some of the units, and it can help you build some of the boards. I wouldn't say anything here as an expert. Obviously it's a long video because I went through all of the units and stuff. Expect some more PBE games tomorrow, and then the live patch is on Wednesday, so I'll be live playing on Wednesday. Please make sure to like and subscribe. If you disagree with anything in the tier list, just know that it's PBE. It's PBE, everybody. That means that it's a beta. Everything is subject to change. I'm going off of like watching tournaments of top level players and playing it myself, right? Not just solely basing on what other people are doing. I'm trying to learn myself. I played a lot of these comps. Some of them I lost with, some of them I won with. The ones I won with, I posted. Trust me, I played like twice as many games as what I've been posting, and I lost with a lot of these trying to force and figure them out. So, you know, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And if they, you know, if they change stuff for the better, thank God. If they don't, you know, watch out for fucking Yone. That's my word of advice. See you guys.